around the space and not sink my behind in anyone's face. Thank you so much for coming out tonight, and welcome to Third Space, and welcome to all of our panelists. This series today is our final in a series that began last year, and we're so glad to have this be sort of the first speaking series that Cleveland Public Market Corporation gets to do. It's such an important topic, thinking about equity, thinking about small business development, thinking about entrepreneurship, and we know that the market can have an important role to play in helping Cleveland be a more equitable space for food-based businesses in Northeast Ohio. So we're thrilled to have everyone here today. I'm going to bring up Dan Roberson from PNC, who's going to share a few words with you, and then we'll get things going.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. How's the food, everyone?
Oh, good.
There we go. I'm really content too with the food. That was the highlight of my day. Actually, though, I just want to thank you all for attending. I just want to let you know that PNC is proud to be a sponsor to this In the Market Speaker Series, because it's really vital that we support our small business entrepreneurs. They are the backbone. They are the economic driver, the engine of our communities. So much that even PNC recognizes, and across our footprint, we have our own community benefit plan that we want to make sure that we're putting money out there to support more moderate income businesses, minority businesses, diverse businesses in a variety of different ways, whether it be from our minority business new development group and team, whether it be through our PNC diversity supplier group, understanding that you have to empower people to give them that opportunity so they can grow and give back to the community. Or whether it's just our branch managers, our team members, and so forth, that are knowledgeable about those resources so we can share the love. So I'm happy to come here and see these wonderful, extensive, just amazing people up here. Make sure you drill them for every single question that you can, because they are just full of information and expertise. And again, I thank you for attending. I'll pass it back over.
Thank you so much, Dan. We're so lucky to have him take off for this work. Now I'd like to briefly introduce Keisha Gonzalez, our moderator tonight. Keisha is currently the Senior Director of Social Impact, Investing, and Economic and Community Development at the Cleveland Foundation, where she has spent the last 6 years, originally as a Program Officer for Community Revitalization and Engagement. Prior to joining the foundation, Keisha served as the Managing Director for Metro West Community Development Organization, where the two of us got to work together on economic development and small business projects. Keisha earned her Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology from Cleveland State University and went on to earn her Master's of Arts in Historic Preservation from the University of Delaware. Committed to equitable placemaking, Keisha has worked on many key projects in the cities where she has lived. Locally, she is part of the Executive Steering Committee that launched La Placita and has elevated La Villa Hispana as a priority placemaking initiative for the Clark-Fulton neighborhood. We're thrilled to have you joining us to moderate this important conversation and kick off today's panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jose. And for the record, that last part was a very long time ago. We're so pleased to have Janice joining us, who leads that body of work today. With that, thank you everyone so much for being here with us tonight, particularly around a subject that is so intimate and personal to Clevelanders across the region. I'm just going to jump right into it because we do have limited time. I want to make sure everyone has space for questions. A quick introduction to the concept of public markets, right? We know that public markets the benefits of public markets are substantial in the urban context. They connect urban and rural economies. They increase access to affordable and healthy foods. They're low-risk business opportunities for vendors and farmers, and they're the OG civic centers, right? And nationally, they continue to be key third spaces in the urban core. And grounded in all these truths this evening, we're joined by four what I like to think of delightfully disruptive leaders who are reimagining markets in service to the preservation of their sacred duty here in community. Today, we're joined by Janice Banderas, Executive Director of the Northeast Ohio Hispanic Center for Economic Development, Corey James, Chief Equity Outreach and Initiative Officer at Jumpstart, Kelly Lancer, President and CEO of the Findlay Market, and Tanisha Velez, the founder of Cleveland Fresh, local business owner and Clark-Fulton resident extraordinaire. So I'm going to just jump right in. So if everyone could, and we'll start with Tanisha, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and what brings you to this conversation tonight.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tanisha Velez. I own a business called Cleveland Fresh. It's a local agriculture operation. We also have by we, I mean my family. We run a baseball league called Roberto Clemente League. It has around 250 kids currently playing in the baseball league. And we run a market every Saturday called La Marqueta at the park. What brings me here is, I think, the passion for the conversation, my past efforts for what we have brought to the city of Cleveland, as in specifically Clarkwood neighborhood, and kind of a little bit of the experience that I also have. So I hope that answered the question.
Good evening, everyone. Janice Contreras, CEO of the Hispanic Center for Economic Development. And so for us, again, this work is old. I feel like everybody told me this work takes a long time and I didn't want to believe them. And so to think that I've been working on this for over a decade is kind of scary, but here we are. We were really looking at the Clark Fulton neighborhood around just a kind of threat of studies happening in a neighborhood where it really didn't have an inclusive resident and neighborhood process to the conversation. The fact that a lot of the planning, entities weren't aware of the vibrancy and the diversity of the neighborhood was definitely a threat for the community. And as we started to look at our own solutions and okay, how do we inject ourselves into these planning processes? We didn't really have like the city planning background or the community development background. So I had to kind of navigate to figure out what that looked like and explore what we were missing. And so for us being a business organization and how we supported the development was really looking at the corridors in the neighborhood and where were there opportunity. And so the lack of opportunity for small businesses to have, space ready or affordable to be able to start a business was really the driver of trying to come up with a solution that ultimately is what today is Centro Villa 25. But it was really a response to a need to provide affordable spaces. Beyond that, it just grew to a lot bigger, right? To just the spaces that we talk a lot about community engagement and we need to reach out to the community and we need community outreach. Well, how is community going to happen when you don't have space, when you don't have parks, when you don't have community centers? And so we used to tell people all the time, I have bars and I have churches. That's where we meet, right? And people have an excuse to either one of those. And so beyond the entrepreneurship piece of it is really being able to create a dignified environment and place for community to come and engage and thrive. And I'll share more later. I'll stop preaching now.
Hi, I'm Kelly Lancer. I'm the president and CEO of the Corporation for Findlay Market. So the briefest history of our organization, we are about 23 years old. So Findlay Market is located in Cincinnati, Ohio. We've been around since 1852. And in the late 90s, early 2000s, we were at kind of we were in a space where we weren't sure if the market house would continue to stay open. So at that point in time, the city of Cincinnati was running the market, managing the market, and they recognized that they needed a little bit more than what they could offer in order to keep it a space for small businesses to thrive. And so there was a group of volunteers called the Friends of Findlay Market, did a lot of research and determined that a nonprofit made a lot of sense to manage Findlay Market. And so there was a big renovation that happened in the early 2000s. And then in 2004, Corporation for Findlay Market was officially launched in partnership with the city of Cincinnati. And at the time, our focus was bring people and bring businesses. So the market house itself, if you haven't been to Findlay Market, it's one floor. We have about 40 spaces inside of our market house. We've got surrounding storefronts at the city, creation of a whole new department, which is what we'll talk about today.
Good evening. My name is Corey James. As she mentioned, I serve Jumpstart in the role of Chief Equity Outreach and Initiatives Officer. I'm relatively new in the role, been at the organization a little under a year, but a little over 6 months if you count my paternity leave. So still relatively new, continue to learn the organization, but extremely happy to be there. In my role, I kind of sit at the intersection of all of our different business lines. And if you're unfamiliar with Jumpstart, we're located in Midtown. We're a venture development nonprofit, and we primarily serve the entrepreneur. Like our mission is to transform communities through unlocking the potential of entrepreneurs, and we do that through a number of different avenues, primarily centered around providing resources, connections and some capital for the different entrepreneurs that we serve. And that ultimately is what brings me to this conversation. I'm not originally from Cleveland, I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, but I moved here almost 20 years ago. And prior to being at Jumpstart, I consulted, and then before that I spent 15 years with the Cavs, which really gave me an opportunity to engage with the community at a very, very high level and understand not only the power of partnership, but the power that Cleveland has. And so just excited to be in my role now to continue to build on that.
Awesome, thank you everyone for your introductions and grounding the conversation for this evening. So kind of going into the first meat and potatoes question of the evening, you know, we acknowledge that there's a myriad of entry points that markets can support for budding food-based entrepreneurs. But particularly when it comes to BIPOC entrepreneurs, we know that the act of just being an entrepreneur of color is the first barrier, right? And within your vantage point and the work that you are leading and the experiences that you've had, can you talk a little bit about what are the barriers you're observing? How are they impacting the success and the retention of BIPOC-owned food businesses? And Janice, do you want to lead the question here?
Sure. Well, one of the things, even as we've been thinking, Centro Villa will have 20 micro retail, kiosk style spaces for business owners to run and operate. And so as we've been working with the entrepreneurs that will be the owners of Centro Villa, the owner of the kiosk program, for years. And so one of the beginning fundamentals is that we're working with entrepreneurs that have a ton of sweat equity, have a skill or talent, but are very poor. And so I think it's just, understanding, so when we're having a conversation about capital, we have to start at a very I don't want to say basic, but just really understanding how you leverage capital for success, right? How do you use debt to be able to grow? And so those are concepts, especially for immigrant communities, especially for communities that have had negative experiences with financial institutions, that you really have to start there. And so there's a core of financial empowerment education that needs to take place before we can even talk about business, right? And so I think for us, we underestimated how much work that would take, right? To then really get into the business planning process and the trust. And honestly, a lot of those conversations could only be had through time and trust and engagement. And so I think that's the other element that kind of ends, for us has been our secret sauce, but it's really the relationship we have with these business owners. When we opened Centro Villa, that's not the first day. We've been working with these folks for years to deliver the space we're getting. And so just understanding, that they don't have large bank accounts, that, a lot of people say, oh, I'm a small business owner, I started out with $300,000. Well, wow. Great for you, but that is not the story. That's not the average story of entrepreneurs that really turn to entrepreneurship as a means to an end, right? They need to support their families for whatever reason. A regular capitalistic system doesn't work, and so they're just really trying. Sometimes it starts out as a hustle, right? I'm going to sell what I know and do what I do and grow it. And then ultimately, but it's almost like, how do we turn that hustle into a viable business that leads to wealth creation, right? And so that, I think, is the journey that we're on.
Awesome, thank you. So go over to Kelly. I'd be really curious about the insights you're seeing, especially as an operator of the market itself.
Yeah, this is such an important question. So I would say that there are three major things that we see. So first, access to capital, which I think could be a 10-hour session that we wouldn't even get halfway through the conversation. And so I'll talk a little bit more about how we deal with that. But that is certainly, I think, the biggest barrier. The second is opportunities. So I think one of the things that we really focus on is understanding that there's not a one-size-fits-all for food entrepreneurs. And so creating opportunities for whatever path makes the most sense in the space that makes the most sense, whether it's a shared-use commercial kitchen, it's an opportunity to test out a brick-and-mortar storefront. It is curriculum-based. It's an outdoor market where you can pop up on the weekends because you're still working your 9 to 5 as you try to start this other business. And then the third thing is access to knowledge. So one of the things that we've known all along is food entrepreneurs don't need our help with food. They can bake and they can cook and they don't need that support, but it's the other things. It's the access to legal, it's understanding marketing, it is food costing, it's also what happens when I crush it at my kid's school and I can make the cupcakes for the class and then the school, and then I'll shoot, P&G wants me to now cater for them. It's those sort of things and access to knowledge, which is where we think we can come in and support versus, again, they don't need my help of cooking anything.
What do you got, Corey?
I was just going to say, regardless of what industry it is, I think that we always got to understand and remember that entrepreneurship is extremely hard. And it's something that I experienced for a little less than a year. I would say that I was moderately successful, but it's not my full-time job right now. And I think regardless, specific to the question of what industry you are, but whatever challenges exist for entrepreneurs are oftentimes just compounded for entrepreneurs of color. And then it goes back to the capital, or just said differently, I think the opportunity to even be able to fail forward. A lot of times people have several chances to get it right, and oftentimes in particular communities of color, that's just not the case. And so I think that is something to where, having the resources around you to help avoid some of those pitfalls are key. And I think that's really ultimately kind of what sets up a foundation to continue to, expand beyond what your area of expertise is, because oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we may be good at that thing we do, but we're not good at running the business. And oftentimes we spend a lot of time so much in the business that we don't have the chance to work on it or don't have the money to compensate those that can work on the business for us or them. So those are just things that I wanted to call out, but it's still related to aversion of capital, resources, and just the overall connection and access that are oftentimes limited depending on what dimension of diversity you represent.
And we're going to go a little bit deeper, Tanisha, later in the conversation on this front, but you have one of the most powerful perspectives as an actual entrepreneur of color in the food sector. What else do you have to add to this kind of observation and trials, tribulations, barriers?
Thank you. So for me, I think it was just the industry I was in because I'm a grower. So there's not too much experience on the business side of that. We do have great coaches like Randy at HBC that does his research, but it's also a minimum thing because of his capacity, right? So also being able for myself to go and learn and reach out to the USDA and figure out all these different things. For entrepreneurs that I kind of support at La Marqueta, I experienced a lot of the language barrier, as well as understanding the permits and things like that, because in some countries you could just pop up in front of your house and sell and there's no issues if you're a food entrepreneur, but then to go somewhere public and try to sell, that's a big no-no, right? So understanding all those issues around that. But for me, I think it was more understanding even the labeling, because I grow microgreens, it's okay. I could sell it as I grow it, but then once you harvest the product, then you have to label it, and then you have to have all these different things on your package, and then it just becomes this big issue, right? So those are just some barriers that I've run into as a farmer or grower in the city of Cleveland.
And thank you so much for kind of diving into kind of even the language barriers and honestly how do our institutional players become culturally competent in providing those institutional services to folks who are navigating those changes in how we do business, which is a whole adding to the list of other things that we could talk for hours on. But before we transition from this question, Kelly, Janice, the insight that you offer, how do you translate that insight into entities that offer capital in product design? Because I think that's the next added layer of opportunity here. It's connecting people to capital, but our capital products, the right fit products for these entrepreneurs.
So one of the things that we have found is for a lot of our entrepreneurs, they start out as pop-up vendors, or they start out in our shared use commercial kitchen, and they're busting their butts, right? They are working more hours than anyone else is. And then when it comes time to grow or scale their business, they go to a bank to get a loan, and they can't get a loan because they don't have proof of sales in a brick and mortar, which is crazy for a trillion reasons. And so we're having those conversations with the banks to talk about how crazy it is, but at the same time, we've created programs that allow them to have sales channels in brick and mortar and other sales opportunities. So through our shared use incubator kitchen, we help them get into stores. We help them get into market stands around the market itself, but also into Kroger, into Jungle Gyms. And then our Finley Launch program gives them an opportunity to be physically in brick and mortar for 15 months so that when they can go afterwards to a bank, they have sales for storefronts that allows them to then not take out a second mortgage, not do crowdsourcing. Again, it's a systemic issue, but we're able to support them so that they're not taking on additional risks in the environment that we have.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think access to capital continues to be one of the biggest barriers for all of the business that Kelly just mentioned. Again, we're starting at a very ground zero level with even getting folks ready for traditional lending. Obviously, we rely heavily on our non-traditional partners, whether it's micro lending, whether it's, interest-free lending, whether it's whatever other tools, it's still not enough, right? It's still, or you get to a layer like, is it culturally relevant? Do they still understand? So for us, it has been significantly challenging. I think we have great partners and financial institutions that do help us, but I don't even think we're getting to the tip of the iceberg. And so I live in constant frustration around this issue. We're doing a strategic plan process, and I think ultimately we will start our own lending fund just because we need to be able to get capital out that's flexible, that understands the relationship we have with the client, and that's able to do that in a way that's dignified and that's culturally relevant. And so I don't, it's a big issue. There's a lot of money, there's a lot of financial institutions, but I don't think we're getting any closer to solving it.
Thank you for that insight. That's such an important facet of this whole conversation. So Kelly, I'm going to bounce back over to you. So a commonly warranted critique that we have here in Cleveland about the West Side market is the merchant makeup. It's not representative of the richness of Cleveland's demography, either in ownership or product offering. So with new nonprofit management, the market has an opportunity to radically reimagine how the market's in service to Clevelanders. As a peer market, can you share with us some of the work that Finley Market has done in kind of developing that pipeline of diverse businesses that are in service to the neighbors of Queen City?
Yeah, great question. So I would say we were in a similar place as you, and the work is not done. But I am proud of the work that we have done over the last decade in recognizing that the business owners were not representative of the community in over the Rhine in Cincinnati in our urban core. And so similar to what I said before, it was really important for us to create programs, multiple programs, again, not one size fits all. And so creating pipelines for every type of food business was really important to us. So I'll just briefly talk about each one and happy to elaborate on any of them. So Finley Market is open year-round. We're open Tuesday through Sunday. On Saturdays and Sundays, though, we have a vibrant outdoor market, and that was kind of the first step in providing opportunities. So on a Saturday, if you come to Finley Market, likely 12,000 people. On a Sunday, we're open less hours, but by hour, it's the most trafficked day of the week. And so it's a low entry for people who want to get in front of large audiences. Sometimes you just want to see if people like your food, and it's also a great way to learn quickly what you're doing well and also not doing well. But then from there, in our master plan, when Corporation for Finley Market was being created, was a shared use incubator kitchen. So we have an 8,000 square foot facility where we have 11 individual businesses or spaces within that business that entrepreneurs can rent out. And the goal there is to specifically support BIPOC women and immigrant-owned businesses, which I talked about before. So we've had 240 businesses go through, be a member of Finley Kitchen. 82% of them fall under one of those categories. So being purposeful in how we recruit, how we support, and some of the businesses have been there since the start. And some, the goal is to incubate out. That shared use incubator kitchen we were talking about before, we thought it was going to be one thing. And we learned really, really quickly that the wraparound support services were so important to these small businesses. Some were coming in and they were moving to Cincinnati from one of our businesses that people really love in Cincinnati is the Rapa Place. They moved from Columbia. They had a wonderful family recipe, which I'm sure Westside Market hears a lot of. I've got this recipe, I'm going to build a business around it. And understanding what they needed to be successful through Finley Kitchen. From there, we saw businesses like the Arepa Place. They were successful in the kitchen, they were successful popping up, and they were saying it's time for brick and mortar, which tends to be the path that a lot of food entrepreneurs go into. And sometimes that's great, but we also realize that it is a big risk financially, especially as we talk about capital. And we were seeing that a lot of people around Cincinnati were providing spaces and nothing more than that. They were looking to just fill a storefront, and people were literally taking out second mortgages. They were crowdsourcing, they were pulling from friends and family, and they didn't know what they didn't know. And so we created Finley Launch, which is our region's only storefront accelerator program for food entrepreneurs. You go into these spaces at Finley Market, so you're in a district where 1.5 million people are coming every year, and you are supported by a full food innovation team, and you get to test out your business, and you can be successful in a bunch of different ways. So you can be successful and you realize that this is what makes sense for your business. Brick and mortar makes sense, or you can, what we call fail fast, but with a safety net. So you realize that for whatever reason this isn't for you, and you can bow out and go back to Finley Kitchen, you can go back to your 9 to 5 somewhere else, but you did it with the support of the market. And all of those businesses, again, have fallen under the categories I've mentioned a few times. From there, the last program I'll quickly mention is Finley Learn. So similar to what I said earlier on is these food entrepreneurs don't need us to come up with a recipe, but we created a full curriculum for businesses to go through, and it is 9 weeks long, and we bring in subject matter experts to teach about, I think you mentioned before, it's the running the business that is hard. It's the hiring, it's the firing, it's what happens when someone eats my food and they get sick, or it's what happens when someone sues me for something ridiculous. It's the marketing, it's the creating the logo, it's all of the business side of things that we can bring in. We can leverage our community to be experts and help them be ready to actually own a business. They can handle the food side, but it's this curriculum that we've developed that we heard the community needed, and creating those specific opportunities for a food entrepreneur to say, I'm at this stage and this makes the most sense for me.
Thank you for walking us through that. This sounds like a fabulous suite and a great opportunity for us to learn here in Cleveland. Janice, I'm going to bounce back over to you because I think that this is actually the question I was probably looking forward to the most tonight, which is, in some ways, there's the historic shortcomings of the Westside Market to contribute to the need to be culturally competent, right? It created a really, what I like to consider delightfully defined opportunity for the existence of Central Villa. Can you describe the needs that catalyzed the development of this project? Can you touch upon how you see Central Villa 25 and the Westside Market interacting as we move into the future, and the symbiotic relationship that can evolve from the opening of Central Villa, which will hopefully be in early 2025?
It needs to be this year. We're opening a market.
We're going to manifest this. It will be this year, friends.
We're opening a market. So, as far as the needs, obviously I touched on some of those, just really trying to find affordable space for entrepreneurs and for them to stay in place, stay in your neighborhood, build it right here in our own backyard. I think the other piece for us was ownership. We couldn't redevelop a neighborhood or a commercial district for a private developer or an owner that's not connected to community. And so it was very ridiculously ambitious for an organization our size to take on, the scale of what an equitable economic development project looks like. But here we are. So ignorance is bliss, and we're getting it done with the support of a ton of folks that have really rallied around our organization to get this done. Early on when we started talking about it, we didn't have a name. We didn't know. We were just like, we're going to do a market. We're going to do a Centro Villa. And so we're going to do a mercado in Spanish. But I think it created some confusion, and people would ask me that pretty early. Well, we have the West Side Market, and so is it going to compete with the West Side Market? And so spend some time early on in the West Side Market just understanding the opportunity and how synergistic having two markets, within less than a mile from each other could be, on the West 25th corridor, which was the big talk at the time. It's one of the top 5 corridors of priority for the city, has the second highest ridership for RTA. So talk about a market opportunity. I guess the word market is a thing, so market opportunity. But I think that just really became it. And then just also understanding the Centro Villa is an ethnic market and diverse. The West Side Market is all food, and maybe that changes, maybe it doesn't. We're food, mercantile, and services, right? So it's just going to be diverse. But why not come on the weekend, on a Saturday or Sunday, and spend your entire day on West 25th? The other thing was, as we looked, the West 25th corridor is only 2.8 miles long, right? So it's a pretty short stretch. But the central part of the corridor, our neighborhood is divided by I-90 and 71, right? And so we have some really fine lines that really create a challenge for our neighborhoods. And so the central part of of the corridor did not have anything. Now we have the Pivot Center, right? Again, this is before the Pivot Center, but really activating that center part of the corridor. Prior to the Pivot Center, you went there if you were going to Metro Health, and if, unless you were having a baby, you weren't going there for nothing fun, right? So really figuring out, again, a market opportunity on how to activate that center part of the corridor with giving people a reason not just to jump on the highways and just fly through West 25th. And so I am excited about what's happening in the West Side Market, excited about what's happening in our center corridor of what's happening along with Metro Health and so many at the end over there with Old Brooklyn and a lot of the work that's happening there, right? So again, it's all coming together to really have defined authentic experiences along just one simple small corridor. And so if now the challenge is packaging it that way, right? And really making sure, but excited with Rosemary's leadership as we work together as well earlier on around really making sure that it's not I go here or I go there. No, it's totally two different experiences, right? And so really figuring that out from a public perspective, but also even on what we're doing with small businesses. I want to send small businesses to have a place at the West Side Market, right? And so what do we do to support those efforts? And I know Rosemary would do the same for Centro Villa. How do they support what we're doing? And again, just really creating this synergistic approach. So unique and amazing opportunity for our city and our neighborhood.
That's fabulous, and I feel like the theme, north to south, is a connectivity through food, taking us all the way from Ohio City into Brooklyn, so what a powerful opportunity. Tanisha, I'm going to transition over to you. So we know that starting a small business is challenging, and as you figured out how to navigate the complexity of resources and institutions, and most importantly, the assembly of a party of the willing in pursuit of your success, right, those champions. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey in that process and kind of who were the key partners who supported you in getting Cleveland Fresh and the market to where it is today?
Yeah, so earlier on, it was kind of just testing the product, as well as just figuring out what resources were out there. So really tapping into HBC, Jumpstart, HFLA as well. So all the different organizations that are here, we have an amazing system within our city that supports our businesses. And then I say a lot, so I apologize. So really trying to figure out who is the main supporter for businesses and what resources and who I can leverage the most for what I need at that moment, right? Because sometimes HBC has amazing programming for certain things, but they kind of lack on something, right? So, and the same thing for Jumpstart and ECDI, right? So who is it that I need to go to for what? So I always vouch for everybody, like, hey, go here, go there for this. The coaching is amazing here. So for my journey,
it was really figuring out what was it that I needed at that moment and who I needed to support me then. So getting a loan from Jumpstart, getting coaching from Randy at HBC, understanding a lot of the marketing and different programs that they all offer was amazing too, and just getting the knowledge that I needed for the business. So as right now, we're relaunching Cleveland Fresh just because we kind of paused it for a little bit to see where we needed to go. And then from that, we kind of figured like Minder came for us to have our product there. So what does that take? A commercial kitchen is very well needed in our community for a lot of entrepreneurs, and specifically like even for my business, because I need to figure out where can I harvest in a commercial kitchen. We did a lot at farmers markets, so we popped up at Camp's Corner, where we were able to kind of try and error our business in a way. So like what worked for the public, what information they wanted to know ahead of time, as well as like what was it how long it took our product to grow, right, and what cycles we needed to have. So it was a lot of trial and error to understand what systems we needed in place in order to make our business successful. So it's taken a little bit, but it's normal. Just like Janice says, it's a journey, so we gotta focus on what's the road ahead of us and what map and resources we have in order to get there. Because I always, like Janice, I'm like, tomorrow is gonna happen, and that's just how it's gonna happen. And I'm gonna do whatever it takes, but that's not how it goes, right, in the business world. So just having a lot of patience, a lot of grace with yourself is very important. But other than that, I've just been trying to help others with the journey that I've had, and just trying to figure out where does it work, right? Because even in our own community, they don't know what it is. Even my mom, I'm like, oh, if you eat this, it's good for you, and this, and she's like, I'm not eating grass. I'm like, that's not what it is, Mom. So yeah, really trying to educate is the most important thing that I try to do too when it comes to the microgreens and all I have to offer.
So real quickly, you mentioned the fact that you're helping others, mentoring others who are going through the same journey. Who from a small business peer has mentored you and helped you outside of our organizations that are here today?
So I've had Humble Mornings. She's a woman-owned coffee business. Latin dance studio, Rosa Cruz. She's very supportive in the business and understanding that, as well as like just opening doors for other places to go and educate, right? So I'm at Lincoln West High School right now teaching students about microgreens. Other businesses, Elements of Eternal Movement, she's also supported me in this journey. It's been a lot. It's a whole like community and team effort, because whatever they're in support of, like we kind of just chat at the coffee table and just talk about all our issues, and we kind of leverage and support each other in a way. So it's a lot of strong women that help me in this journey.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because we just know how important it takes a village, right? It's not our institutional organizations, and it's not just the capital providers, but the village that support us in that process. Corey, I'm going to transition over to you, become a client. So as we navigate the business development and institutional access as one of the biggest hurdles that new businesses face, and business owners in general, in your experience at Jumpstart, what are the top skills that minority entrepreneurs need to overcome the hurdle that is access to capital, and how can they gain those skills? I'm going to add another layer to that question. What behavior changes can capital providers have in order to meet entrepreneurs in the middle?
But I mentioned I just started at Jumpstart like 3 weeks ago. I think that's a great question, and I think that it's a very loaded question with a lot of things that could take a lot of days or hours to address. I think that for one, organizations have to, I think, have a clear understanding of spaces that they want to own versus spaces they want to support, and be able to redirect individuals that they're serving to the proper services. I want to give you a lot of credit for being able to navigate, because those are things that aren't always easy, and sometimes institutions can say, well, no, you're my client, as opposed to doing what's best for the client. And I think that from a behavioral standpoint, like something that's been very important for me in coming on board at Jumpstart is, when you think about a new strategic plan, moving into a brand new building, trying to figure out how to best orchestrate strategic partnerships, you want to know who you are and who you aren't, what you do well, what you don't, what things you want to continue versus discontinue versus evolve. And I think that being able to, outside of a strategic plan or big initiative that's launching, to have a self-assessment and understand what are the outcomes that I'm looking to drive, and is it something that I'm satisfied with based off of the metrics that I'm getting, or is it something that I should possibly partner with others to drive a little bit further? And I think that's just a level of transparency that we should all have, not only with ourselves as entrepreneurs in terms of what are the things that I need, but then also as organizations to say, hey, even though we can, this person may not be the right client, or we should probably send them to a different organization to get better services. And I think that that's something that I've tried to be intentional about, or just ask a lot of questions about it within my role in the short amount of time I've been there.
So I'm going to toss one more question at you before we enter or close that question, which is, for the Westside Market to become a BIPOC business site of choice, right, where people want to be there, what organizations can the Westside Market partner with to focus on culturally competent supports for aspiring or current vendors? And this is the part that I think is a lot more, is most importantly, is that how can the market and vendors alike develop an enabling environment for a thriving and diverse vending ecosystem?
I think you can't do everything at one time. I think you have to be intentional about your approach. I think that you have to, once you understand what you want to be intentional about having strategic partnerships that allow you to develop that trust that may not already exist. At the end of the day, any real, equity platform should be rooted in being relevant and trusted in the community that you serve. And really the only way that you do that is by building relationships one way or another. And so I think that the market has to be intentional about that. They have to know who they are and who they aren't. And then based off of the clients that they're looking to bring in, align with the organizations who already have that trust, develop partnerships that can, again, that the market can support, but not necessarily own, because you're relying or leaning on the trust of others. And it's kind of like you want to prove, you want to, especially in communities of color, sometimes you have to walk it, not just talk it. And I think people are looking to see what you are doing, who have you served, or they're looking for you to walk the walk. And I think that being proactive and aligning with different organizations, institutions, or people who are serving the communities in a real authentic way. And some of them aren't institutions like what was mentioned, but the people, like you mentioned in terms of your circle. So it's just being intentional and having a dedicated focus, and not just having like conversations like this, but developing some action items coming out of it that can be pointed at, this is what we did to move the needle forward.
Awesome, thank you so much, Corey. Ladies, any further insight on that subject? Cool, solid. All right, our closeout question. I'm really excited for Q&A that's living in the audience right now. So with new nonprofit leadership, there's a lot of room to simply have the audacity when it comes to the future of the market and the evolving role it plays in our communities. Again, to keep the question clean and simple, what's your vision for the market's future? And on top of that, what's your number one BIPOC food business that we should be slamming this weekend?
As someone who's not from Cleveland, something that I've always enjoyed is whenever my families come to join and we're looking for something to do, especially if we're not going out to a restaurant, I've always made the market a place as an attraction. I think that we have to ensure that we don't make the market I wish I would have known type of scenario. And there's a lot of people who may know about it but haven't experienced it. So what can we do to get the exposure, especially within communities that may not frequent the West Side, to be exposed to even have it become relevant. I think what should we be slamming this weekend? I'm gonna come back to that one.
We will circle back. Kelly.
I can answer parts of this question. I look forward to hearing the recommendations, so I can come back. I think I have the opportunity and perspective here because West Side Market is where we were a few years ago, right? So a lot of the pain points I think that the market has gone through, we were dealing with that a few years before Cleveland was. And so I said it before, but I think using the word strategic and having intent in your strategic plan or your sub-strategic plan, and for us, it was being intentional on having actual staff focused on this. So rather than just talking about it, we were investing in, in people. When we looked at building a team, we have team members that specifically work with these small businesses on starting, growing, and scaling, versus putting our dollars in other parts of the organization. For us, it was being intentional that this was a priority for us, and these people on our team are going to build these programs and stick around to be a mentor support system throughout the process.
So for me on the market one, I obviously hope to be a partner in being able to help the market, support entrepreneurs specifically, and obviously diverse entrepreneurs. For me, when you go down into the West Side Market, being able to see people that I know and seeing vendors that I know and being able to recognize folks. My experience at the West Side Market, maybe I know one person the whole time I'm there. So that to me, Cleveland is small. So I want to walk by, I want to see Keisha and the boys shopping, and I want to, sit down and eat next to somebody that, So I think that for me would be it. I think I also sometimes, I worry about this for Centro Villa, and I worry about this on the West Side Market is affordability. And families really being able to come there and take advantage of everything that's there, not just the produce, not just the stuff that's on sale. Can they purchase the meats? Can they eat at whatever amazing food establishment the West Side Market will have in the future? So that would be great too, so we could stay longer. So I think that is also an element that's a challenge, right? Because you want the business owners to make money, but you also need to stabilize the pricing in the market, and that's always the hardest task. So I think that for me is my aspiration for the market. As far as food, call me, I am a walking Rolodex for Latino food, anything. But I will throw out there Tropical Bay, which is a Puerto Rican Dominican restaurant in Broadview Heights, and the best mojitos in town. And mojitos are hard, we're not a rum city, but and it is after hours, so technically happy hour, go to Tropical Bay, but they will also be the bar operator, and you will get the mojitos at Centro Villa. So that's my little corner.
And I think they do a pancha one, right?
They do.
Okay.
34
So,
flavors.
listen, so I think for me, my vision, change is scary, but it's also the best opportunity, right? I think for me, just to see different entrepreneurs, it's an amazing space. My son knows where to get boba, and I still need a map to manage through the market, which is kind of scary. But just having those entrepreneurs that are at Centro Villa, grow and expand, or even just people that are learning their business and growing their business, a la Marqueta, and just expanding to that space because now they have their foot on the ground, right? And they're ready to go. For me, I think I always pronounce it wrong, but it's Talacualis. It's an authentic Mexican small business. I like to say growing business. And she does elotes on a stick or in a cup, and then she does different kinds of entrees. She's at the market every Saturday, but she does catering as well. So she's looking for a space to grow, and she has a cart that she will bring and set it up in a corner, and she's able to sell. Thank you.
Awesome. Bring us home with your recommendation.
All right, so since we're right here, we're gonna do a comfort CLB right down the street. Got it. You can walk. That's one. Also, just from an experiential perspective, and I know he's clients of all of ours, Flying Pig Tacos is really cool. Not only is it a good product, but he also provides experiences at your home. So you can have an authentic Mexican experience where you can, whether it's making your picos, your guacamoles, your tacos, it's fun for the family or an overall event. So those are two that I would kind of throw out. And then shameless plug, maybe not for right now, but for one of the weekends, top of 2025, make sure you come to the Midtown Collaboration Center because it will be the third iteration of Pearl's Kitchen, and then also Black Frog Brewery, which is the first Black-owned brewery in all of Ohio. They're based in Toledo, but we'll have a location that will be in the Midtown Collaboration Center.
You stole my closing, so thank you.
You're welcome. That's why you came back to me.
But I will double down on that. Check out at the Midtown Collaboration Center once it opens next year for Black Rock Brewery. It'll be the first Black-owned brewery in Cleveland. We're super excited to be welcoming them into the Cleveland market. So with that, if we can give a round of applause to these panelists doing phenomenal work. So I didn't get instructions on Q&A.
Well, we have time for a couple questions.
Okay.
If folks have them, and then of course the panel will be here after if you want to ask individuals.
Awesome. Anyone in the crowd got questions?
I just want to say, Keisha, I feel like you got to throw out another one or two recommendations since Corey you mentioned yours. So if you have one or two other businesses, I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on a pupusa kick right now. Guanaquitas, absolutely on West 25th Street. If you are hankering for really, really delicious pupusa. Also, running neck and neck is Rinconcito Chaping in Old Brooklyn as well. Just phenomenal pupusas. And I will also say this one's a little bit out in the suburbs, but since Janice went into that edge, I just experienced a new Korean barbecue place in Strongsville next to the mall. Absolutely phenomenal, great experience. So if you're ever in the space over there, check that out too.
So we don't have a question. Can I do another shameless plug?
Sure. You don't gotta take the mic away from us.
So everybody is familiar with the West Side Market, obviously. I think it would be we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Market Avenue Wine Bar. It's right across the street from the Great Lakes, and it's now Hispanic Latino owned. So you go get your cheese or whatever, or your product. Just make sure you make it a part of your journey when you go to the market.
Thank you.
Hello. I wanted to ask, as like an entrepreneur and future business owner, what advice or strategies would you give for being in the community but being able to authentically connect with those in the community, and also bridging the gap between African American, Latino, all the different kinds of communities, so that they're all being able to be just authentically affected by your business and like making a difference? Like, what strategies and advice do you have?
I'll start. I mean, and I think it's similar advice to Corey that Corey gave earlier about just deciding who you are as an entrepreneur and what you do, and bringing your authentic self to whatever your products or services are going to be is the start. But then yet still being flexible, to understanding how to being able to engage others. Then something might not be familiar, right? Like food, right? Like not everybody is comfortable with spicy. And guess what? All Latino food is not spicy, right? So like there's the education element to your business that Tanisha has spent a lot of time in really educating on I had no clue what microgreens were until Tanisha. I thought they just put them in the fancy restaurants for decoration. Then learned all the nutritional value. So the education piece too that you offer, I think Northeast Ohio is an amazing, diverse place. And so I think as a business owner, you have the opportunity to really bring something that's unique to you, to your business, to your family, to your history, and being able to share it, with the world. And so I think just really being always just true to what you are and not feeling like you have to change. Because I think that's the challenge as a business owner. You want to sell it, right? It needs to be, and it has to be marketable, right? You have to figure that out. Because even though it might be great, or my Puerto Rican oatmeal might be great at home, and it might not be appetizing, right, to a community. So really just understanding how you're bringing it to market, but yet still staying true to your recipes or your things. And I'm assuming it's a food-based business because that's what we're talking about today. But yeah, I think most folks are receptive to supporting small businesses, and definitely connecting with your tribe. Finding your tribe around folks that are doing other like-minded things. We often think of each other as competition, and we're not, right? Collaborate with people that are doing something similar. You're always going to have your own special twist to anything. but think as your competition as collaborators, because you'll learn a lot about what to do or what not to do. I just shared with Finley Kitchen. I'm like, I've called your kitchen 100 times because we're trying to figure out our kitchen. And, I ask things like, if you had to do it over, what would you do differently, right? And so, again, there's just a lot more in sharing and collaboration and learning that's going to help you, and it's going to lift up small businesses altogether.
I would just add very similarly that you want to build on a firm foundation, so spend the time getting it right. The fact that you know what you're aspiring to do, take that time to build, develop, understand, have a real business plan to set yourself up for being successful, and stage it out so that you approach it in bite-sized pieces, and then identify the organizations that can help you, and then being relevant to Janice's point, ensure that you're partnering with people and going where others that also do similar things are at. Start to network, build relationships, and really define, no pun intended, like what's really going to be your secret sauce and your differentiator that makes you stand out, and then build on that.
And to kind of close up that question, like, knowledge is power, right? You brought up the notion of how can I resonate across cultures, right? Like, we are all like ginormously broad diaspora. A lot of Latino cuisine is actually grounded in West African cuisine, right? We know that we have shared foundations. So how much of that learning journey that you are currently on can open doors for educational conversations amongst one another? Because I think that is like one of the most powerful opportunities that food presents across our communities, whether it's the Black community, Latino community, the AAPI community. I mean, just so much connective tissue there. So I thank you for that question. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Aaliyah. I'm the owner of Macatech. I make Southern style macaroni and cheese, and I'm curious to know what steps are being taken to remove some of the barriers for African American entrepreneurs. As a small business owner, and I distribute to 17 different grocery stores, but I have tried, probably maybe not aggressive enough, but I've tried with the West Side Market, and it's been said that's not a place for us. It's just not a place for Black folks. Ain't no Black vendors in there, and there hasn't been a good response. And so, what steps are? I feel like we have to work much harder to convince you to sell our product, to get you to taste it, to even bring it in. So I'm curious to know after this meeting, or what processes are in place to remove some of those barriers so that we are comfortable with applying and sitting at the table and having those conversations. I operate out of the Central Kitchen, a commercial kitchen downtown, and I work very closely with two white friends who operate who have stands at the market. And so we talk all day about everything, and these conversations come up because, they too realize, I don't think there is any in the market. And it's this unspoken thing where it's really not the place for us. And I'm like, well, what happened to the East Side Market? Or what if we had a place similar to that for us? And I've shopped West Side Market for a lot of years, but I want to go into a place where I can see some people that look like me and serve me those familiar faces, if that makes sense.
Thank you for that question and raising a really, important concern. I'd love to welcome Rosemary to maybe participate in this question.
Sure, so I think there are no Black vendors in the West Side Market. There's no Black-owned business currently in the West Side Market, and I think that's part of the reason we are where we are today, and part of the reason why, I think hopefully nonprofit management will be able to be much more intentional and thoughtful about how we cultivate relationships, how we make opportunities possible for people who are not represented, especially African Americans, Black-owned businesses, Latino-owned businesses in the West Side Market. And so, there are some opportunities right now, but we also know one of the challenges in the market is that there isn't certain types of kitchen space. There aren't, I don't know enough about your specific business, but in general, there's, challenges where folks who are interested in the market we don't necessarily have the infrastructure to support them being in the market, and so that's an additional barrier. And so I think some of what we have to do is tackle some of our infrastructure barriers, and then we have to couple that with building relationships and being very intentional in our merchant recruitment strategy moving forward. So, I know folks have asked me, why haven't you already filled the few vacancies in the market hall? And the answer is because we have people come and they stay at the market for a long time. And so we have I don't want to say one shot, but we have a limited shot to get it right. And so we frankly have not sorted through our process to make sure that we're able to have enough connections with enough diverse communities so that when we start soliciting applications for those spaces, that we ensure that we are getting diverse folks applying and wanting to be there. And I think that's an important piece of it. But I don't have all the answers, but I'm sorry if somebody told you in the past that the West Side Market was not a place for you. The West Side Market should be a place for anyone from any background to operate a successful food-based business. And I'm hopeful that with my team and the folks we have in place that we will be able to figure out how to make the West Side Market a welcoming space for all and more reflective of the Cleveland community.
If I can add to what you're saying.
Sure, go for it.
Just add to some other things that Rosemary is working on with this and that Jessica has worked on. Some of the challenges were before, the city wouldn't give anybody more than a year lease, and wouldn't allow pop-up leases, wouldn't allow month-long leases and things like that. So now switching to the nonprofit system, the nonprofit is able to change that and make it more open to actually doing pop-up stands. The other challenge that we've had for a really long time, and I'm guessing this might be something that you faced as well, is with the prepared food, there isn't the mechanism within the market to have live cooking. There is no kitchen in the basement, there's no kitchen anywhere, and there's no hoods or exhaust systems anywhere in the market for live cooking.
I sell a grab-and-go product.
Okay,
It's
so
a
then-
cold product, yeah.
So just, those are some other barriers that the nonprofit is working through for the future. But know that I think the whole organization is aware that this has been a problem in the past and is very committed to changing that.
Good.
Thanks for letting me butt in.
Thanks, Carrie. Carrie is one of our board members. Do you have any further questions from the crowd?
I don't have a question, I have more of a comment to add on what she said. I think that it's important about, as it pertains to the market, just the general awareness, because not if I'm from a community that traditionally doesn't even feel welcome or doesn't frequent the market in general, I'm not even gonna know about a leadership change or know why I should consider or think anything is different today. So I think from a general branding and brand awareness, like in terms of having community conversations, because it's just as important for her to know that it's a change so that when she's talking to other people in the industry, she can help create the narrative and speak on your behalf. But that requires, hand-to-hand combat, some real conversations. And I think that, in order to, people should understand and know that it's new leadership, it's an opportunity for a new vision. And that was really kind of the premise of your last question of how do you want to think about the market differently? Well, it's because there's new leadership. Similar to Jumpstart, we've been around for 20 years, but we have a new CEO. We're moving into a new headquarters, which gives us a reason to attack our business differently. But everyone may not know that. And so we have to, as institutions, sometimes go on the offensive to drive the awareness that because we live in our own bubbles, assume everyone knows when that's just not the case.
I think we'll wrap it up there.
All right, awesome. Well, with that, we want to extend so much gratitude for you guys being with us here tonight. And can we get one more round of applause for our extraordinary panelists? Okay, and I'm going to turn it over to Rosemary, who will lead our close-up.
I just, Keisha already said it, but thank you again to everyone for coming out tonight and participating in this important conversation. I think as you can see from the conversation, from the questions tonight, we have a lot of work ahead of us, and I'm looking forward to doing it. I hope you will be patient with us as we take the time to do many of the things that the panelists have said tonight, which is build the relationships, be very intentional, be very strategic, because I think we have a lot of work to do, but we want to take the time to get it right. So again, thank you to Tanisha, Janice, Kelly, Corey, and Keisha so much for participating this evening. I also wanted to let you know that tonight, thanks to Third Space, they're offering 15% discount on all their books here, and want to thank them for the space, thank PNC again, and thank the Home Pantry for helping organize a beautiful spread from many of the merchants at the market. So thanks for being here tonight. Stay, network, eat. There's a lot of food, and I look forward to catching up with many of you afterwards.